Hi, I want to welcome everyone tonight, and as always, a big thank you to the International Operating Engineers 513 for donating the hall for us to use every month. First of all, can we have any elected officials that would like to be recognized, please stand and state your name. In the back.
Hi, I'm Scott Zimmer from the city of Bridgeton.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll be off in the back. That's nice.
Okay, my name is Karen Nickel, and I am one of the 4 moms for the organization Just Moms St. Louis STL. Some of you may have heard of us referred to as the Moms or West Lake Moms. At this time, I'd like to introduce the other 3 moms that represent that group. Dawn Chapman, Beth Strohmeyer, and Debbie Lister down here running the computer. We'd also like to give a big shout out to the Pattonville Fire District, the Franciscan Sisters of Mary. Is Ken Baker with SSM DePaul here tonight? Ken Baker in the back there. And Mike Fulton, Superintendent, Pattonville School District. Are there any other businesses or organizations that would like to be recognized this evening? If you haven't already, we would like that you sign in at the sign-in table that's in the lobby here. I know some of you came in the back, so in case you missed that and you want to sign in, you can do so. We have a trifold in the back here that's full of information. We have handouts along with petitions and sign-on letters to our federally elected officials, the governor, the AG, the EPA. So keep all of that in mind before you leave this evening. If you are looking for information about Spanish Village, the trailer park, or the condos, would you please see Chuck and Kathy Bell? If you guys could raise your hand right here. How many of you are here for the first time tonight? Wow. How many of you are here that live in Spanish Village or the mobile home or condos? I have one more question. If you're comfortable, could you raise your hand if you've been attending these meetings for the past at least 6 months or so? I just want to point out that by coming to these meetings, you are becoming educated and able to pass along factual information to others that may not be aware that we have nuclear weapons waste from the Manhattan Project that was illegally dumped in a landfill that is sitting in a floodplain of the Missouri River in Tornado Alley with an underground smoldering event often referred to as a fire within 1,000 feet of said radioactive waste sitting in a heavily populated area filled with residents and businesses. So, although we're not happy for the reason that we have to be here, we're thankful to see all of you, whether it's your first time or whether you're attending every month. I would also like to remind everybody to continue to submit the odors, as you all noticed walking in that the odor is pretty bad today. We have the link for the odor pinned to the top of our Facebook page, West Lake Landfill, or you can also access it through our website at stlredwastelegacy.com. Dawn's going to talk a little bit more of the importance of submitting these reports a little bit later. This is what the odor form looks like online. So if you've never filled one out, this is kind of what it looks like. Also, it's changed in the past couple of months, and sometimes it's a little difficult to get it to take. Just keep trying.
Excuse me, is there any way that you could get this by postal mail? This particular form? I do not have a computer. I am not on there. I'm recovering from brain surgery from a brain tumor. I live in Bridgeton.
I'll call DNR tomorrow morning and.
Thank you. I did put my address rather than an email. I do not have an email address, but I would like the information, but I have no way of getting it by computer.
Okay.
Okay, and I think,
So, and I'm sure there's plenty of people here that may not have a computer that would like it by postal service.
there's also a phone number up here
Okay?
that you can get, and you can call them and tell them about the odor.
Would you mind telling me what it says? It's a little light. I see the 800. Is it that first phone number there, 800?
800-361-4827.
Okay. Thank you so kindly.
You're welcome. Last week on Facebook, on our Facebook page, we had someone acknowledge that we've been taking donations for soil samples. Not only did this person acknowledge this, they also pledged to donate $25 to our group and challenged others to do the same. We are absolutely touched by this gesture. We have now created a PayPal account for those that wish to donate online. If you go on our website in the next couple of days, there will be a donate button that you can click on and you can make your donation online. We are also going to pass around the red bucket. Marissa here and Kirsten are going to pass it around. It's unfortunate that we have been put in this position of collecting and spending our own hard-earned money to obtain professional independent testing to make sure our family and our future generations are kept safe and protected. Unfortunately, that's what it's come down to, and if you would like to contribute, please put your contribution in the red bucket.
Maybe make out a personal check?
You can make out a personal check. You would make it out to Just Moms STL. Another thing that we are looking for is if anyone has an old laptop or desktop computer they would like to donate, we are still in need for one. This is going to be used to run the software for the air monitors that we purchased that would access everyone 24-hour real-time access to air monitoring. We would like to have this up and running before they break ground for the barrier. So we have one, we need another one. So if anybody has one they would like to donate, yes? It's fine. The only thing that's going to run on that computer is this software. That would be great. Thank you. Yes, if you want to write a check, you can write it out to Just Moms STL. Okay, most of you, some of you, know that we usually have Ed Smith with the Missouri Coalition for the Environment doing presentations along with us at our community meetings. Excuse me. But tonight he has a family health issue, so he can't make it with us. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. Harvey Ferdman, policy advisor for State Rep Bill Otto, he is usually with us, but he is attending his daughter's wedding this weekend, so happy thoughts for him. And Matt Levanchi, assistant fire chief for Pattonville Fire District, is under the weather tonight, so we don't have him either. So you're stuck with us. I think that's all I have for now. I'm going to turn it over to Beth Strohmeyer. Thanks.
Good evening. The Just Moms STL have been putting out newsletters. This is the newsletter that went out this week, so I'm going to read it to you. We moms would like to take a moment to thank the media for all the continuous coverage about West Lake Bridgeton Landfill. One thing we hope that everyone can understand is this community is searching for the truth. Whatever that ends up looking like, the people have decided that they would rather know than continue to live in the dark. We know that Bridgeton is getting a bad eye over this issue, and it's very hard to see that happen. Every new document that we find or that an outside agency writes seems to indicate that West Lake Landfill is worse than originally thought back in 2008 when the record of decision was put into place. It is our opinion, after speaking with many long-term residents, the thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is that Bridgeton was hurt a long time ago. It's just now we are waking up to it. The mayor has been in place for over 28 years. One of the longest running mayors in St. Louis. He has been there even before the EPA came in and deemed West Lake a Superfund site. Somewhere the leaders of Bridgeton decided that it was a good idea to allow their city to grow up around a non-remediated Superfund site within the world's oldest nuclear weapons waste sitting on the surface. We moms can't help but think what somewhere along the line in this process of growth in Bridgeton, throughout the airport buyout, the development of Earth City, that someone, somewhere, must have scratched their heads and thought to themselves, this probably isn't the safest, healthiest place to build. When looking at BMAC ball fields, we have to wonder, who thought it was a good idea to place these fields 0.08 miles downwind, downhill from a non-remediated Superfund site? A place also happens to be the lowest point and drain for all of Earth City. And if you are EPA, who in the world decided it was unnecessary to test those fields decades ago, knowing full well the history of radioactive waste throughout St. Louis? We received a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Mr. Payne about living on Coldwater Creek. Our hearts absolutely break for this man. The legacy of his radioactive waste continues to tear apart his family, attacking their DNA and running rampant from generation to generation with no end in sight. And he still lives on the creek. His yard has not been tested. So that legacy will allowed to continue until either his property is declared unsafe and he is told to move, or it is cleaned up. And even if not, at remediation level now. Who knows where it will be in 10 years, since this becomes more radioactive over the next 9,000 years. People have criticized us for testing. You're ruining our town. You're causing trouble. Then there's the statement that blows our mind. If the fields were not safe, then the EPA would say so. We drove past Coldwater Creek about a month ago on a beautiful day. There were kids playing in that creek in an area that has not been cleaned or tested. We would like to remind everyone that St. Louis Foods Wrap is testing 2,000 more sites this year in the creek. But they are behind. And the reason that they're behind is when they are testing, they are finding levels so high that they have to stop testing and remediate them. Coldwater Creek is still accessible to the public, and it still floods in people's basements. St. Louis has a very well-kept secret that is hurting generations of people. It's time to pull this Band-Aid off fast and look at the wound underneath. So far, it's pulled off so slowly that it's excruciating. It's an expensive job, but it's not going to get any cheaper, and it's not going to go away. There is no better time to deal with it than right now. So thank you again for your coverage and your continued coverage in the future. Signed, Just Moms, STL.
I want to talk a little bit about BMAC. Kind of like what Beth just said, the reason that we chose BMAC is for the location and the fact that it If you look at the topography of the land, it is the drain for all of our city. It is the lowest spot. It is 0.08 miles downwind, downhill of a Superfund site, and not just any Superfund site, the world's oldest nuclear weapons waste, and it's sitting on the surface of our landfill. Some of it's buried, but some of it is on the surface. It's very important to us, and I'll get into this in a minute, to make sure that you guys understand that there are other sites throughout St. Louis where we know for a fact that this has not stayed put. It is susceptible to rainwater, it is susceptible to wind blown. We get a lot of severe thunderstorms here. We've had 2 tornadoes within the past 4 years, come zipping right by this landfill. The first misconception that I want to clear up is that we did not test BMAC. Moms did not go out and grab soil samples, for the record, because a lot of people are stating that. Some media, at the press conference that we just had this past Friday, we actually went out and hired a technician. We hired somebody who followed testing protocol. It was quality assured. He labeled every sample. He labeled the location of the samples. He bagged them. He logged them, filled out a log, sent that log along with them to a lab, whom we then paid to test them. We worked step by step with EPA through that whole process. We approached them. One of the things that we offered to do, it's called splitting samples. We offered a couple of weeks ago, and they said no, no sample. EPA would not accept any samples other than samples that they collected themselves. So they knew that we were testing. I actually called EPA yesterday morning, checked with the lab first. They still have our samples. We only did gamma in our samples, so we actually just sent off a check. We're going to pay to have them sent to another lab to have complete isotope breakup, so all alpha, beta, and gamma done, so that we will know 100% what's in that sample. We had to do it in stages because we just didn't have the money. We just can't, it's thousands of dollars to do this. So we had to break it apart and do it piece by piece as we could afford to do. I called EPA yesterday. I said, we're getting ready. We just sent the check off to Eberline Lab. I said, I spoke with the lab that the samples are at right now. Would you guys like these samples? There's enough to split the sample and send them to EPA. And they said no. So, just to double reiterate here, we did offer to split these samples with EPA. I would like to also remind you, I don't know how many of you guys are watching the news out in Wildwood, but I understand EPA's position that they can't accept our samples. We have always asked them to come out and do testing. We've been asking them for the better part of 6 months to come out here and test the ballpark. And so we expected when our results came back that they would go out and do their own. So we're thrilled that that's what they're going to do. But I would like to point out that one of the things they stated was that EPA, these are not scientific samples because they're collected by a community. That's completely false. If you're watching the news, just in the past month, the city of Wildwood, some of their city councilmen went out and paid for lab testing to find dioxin. The EPA was saying for years that there was no dioxin there, and so finally they just wrote their own checks, went out and did their own samples, and EPA's out there right now cleaning up dioxin. So there is a history. Same thing with Times Beach. They had to take their own samples and then send them, get them analyzed, get them back, say we have a problem before EPA would come out. That's not to throw stones at EPA. It's just to say that typically they're not first responders. They're not known for being the first ones on the scene. They're not known for being the first ones to find things. So I want to ask that you keep that in mind. Yeah, the passing around right now are the maps of BMAC where we took the samples so that you guys can see. EPA has this information as well. They know the GPS coordinates of where every sample was taken. Like I said, we're encouraged that EPA is doing testing. We really want to make sure it's done correctly though. You know, they need to do alpha, beta, gamma, they need to do the full spectrum. They also need to test the ditches in the low-lying areas where this nuclear waste is known to settle due to rainwater runoff. It's important for many reasons. They come back and they say, well, kids aren't playing in those ditches. The fact is that if the ditches are contaminated, then it got there somehow. And frankly, I think it's irresponsible to assume that it got there and it collected in those ditches, that in the next 10 years, it won't move from those ditches and collect somewhere else. If it's there, we need to know and we need to contain it. We need to stop it from spreading, so. One of the things too that I want to make sure you guys understand, and if you'll bear with me, just really small chemistry real quick. I want to make sure you understand the difference between background and remediation level. Background is simply, it's above what should be there. Does that make sense? It's God, Mother Nature, whoever did not put it there. It's at an amount that's higher than it should be. Within, and here's where we either are lucky or not, within St. Louis, because we have nuclear weapons waste, we have several agencies. We have the Army Corps of Engineers, St. Louis Food Swrap, who's cleaning up North County, okay, and they have their own cleanup standard, which is about 5 picocuries per gram. That's their cleanup standard. We out here with West Lake have EPA. EPA has a higher cleanup standard. Theirs is 7.5 picocuries per gram. Then you also have DOE levels, which are actually, Debbie, 2.5. Am I right? Yeah, 2.5 picocuries per gram. So in the next couple of months, as EPA is doing these tests and as our tests are coming back, you're going to hear us talk about this a lot. It's important for us moms. We will never be able to come out. You'll never hear this from us telling you what you should or shouldn't do. We'll never come out and say the field is or isn't safe. That's not the purpose for this right here and what we do. The sole purpose is to give you the information and to educate you about what it means so that you can go and make your own decisions. That's what we're trying to do here. So keep in mind that you can have something that's above background and that's below remediation level, okay? You can have something that falls in between. You can also have it fall in between Food Swrap's cleanup level and EPA's cleanup level. Okay, so it falls in between, which means if Food Swrap has it, they'd be cleaning it up. But since it's EPA, it's below their cleanup level. So as a community, this is why it's so important that you guys come here and bring a friend. We've got some decisions to make, and within those standards, we're going to have to do a lot of pushing, I think, with our elected officials, with the city of Bridgeton, with the county executive's office, with our state representatives and our senators, our congressmen and our congresswomen. Okay, with this. Can you move to Laddie Avenue? Okay, this is, I think, one of the main things that I want you to see tonight. There are 2 shaded areas. I'm actually going to walk out here. Real quick, Laddie Avenue, the waste that sits at West Lake Landfill right now sat out at Laddie Avenue. And it sat out for many, many years. It leaked into their creek, the Coldwater Creek right there. You also have the St. Louis Airport site. Can you see that one, Beth? It's right there at the bottom.
This is the airport site right here. And this right here, this is Laddie Avenue. And right about here is where the waste sat out.
Thanks. It's magic. I know, I feel like Vanna White. Okay, so this is the St. Louis Airport site. This is McDonald Boulevard, okay? This is actually the airport over here. from McDonnell Douglas over here, Boeing. So you have this area right here. This thing right here, this is Coldwater Creek. Goes all the way up to the top. See the little red hook at the top? That's the creek. And right here is Leddy Avenue. Our waste was moved from here to here. Some of this was shipped by railroad, but the rest and all the soil was scraped up and dumped at West Lake Landfill. And the reason that's important, because if you can see this red area, these are all vicinity properties. This whole thing is a property. This is all contaminated from rainwater runoff, from windblown. Here's the really heartbreaking thing about this. Remember how we said EPA wouldn't let you play on a contaminated ball field? Folks, the creek has been tested all the way up. That's the highway up there, so past the highway. You go further than that and it hasn't been, okay? They're just now starting to test. And like she said, they're finding areas that are so hot and so radioactive, they have to actually stop and remediate them. So they're actually behind on their testing. Again, keep in mind, they're finding spots in a creek where kids are still playing in it, where it's still flooding in people's backyards. I think one of the most heartbreaking things of all, if you see these little see how it should be like one big circle, but see how it goes in like this? You see that and how it goes in up there? The reason for that, you have homes in there. They've excluded all the homes in North County. They're only focusing on the businesses and calling them vicinity properties. The reason they're doing that is because this is phase 1. There'll be a second phase, and that will include homes. But again, keep in mind, they're finding it right here. What about the houses in here? What about this area? Same thing, on the very outcrop right there, they're finding it right there. What about the areas in there? You have to understand that St. Louis has a big problem, not just Westlake, but it's just, when I say they're ripping the Band-Aid off too slow, that's what I mean. It takes time to find this stuff, but it's taken years. It's been the better part of 10 years. That's 10 more years to get into phase 2, and then how long? So we really need to push here, especially for BMAC. It's very important. That's why we're doing our own samples. We're trying to push really hard. We don't want to wait 10 years as a community for them to find out if our ball field's contaminated or not. We just don't want to, because that whole time, kids will be on it. Can we do the DNR offsite testing? Sorry, you know what? Let's go to this real quick. One of the things that we're being asked a lot about is the difference in radiation. And we're telling you what we've always told you, which is, you know, exposure to radiation. If you're pregnant, they say don't be. This is an alpha particle. They're very, very small. This is a radioactive particle. If you see, can you guys see the star shape? This is lung tissue. The star shape is the damage that's happening around it, because what happens is it's shooting little protons out, shooting little particles out, and when it does that, it's damaging the area and the cells around it. Now when that happens, one of 3 things can occur. 1, the cell can replace itself and make, completely cure itself and make itself better. 2, because these are so little and they're shooting out so fast, they can actually damage DNA. They can actually knock pieces of DNA off. And what happens then is, again, it either replaces itself or it mutates. When it mutates, then it becomes cancer. The third option is it damages the cell so bad the cell simply dies. But this thing, when you get this inside of you, it continues. I mean, some of these have 6.5 million year half-lives. Okay, so even when you're dead and gone and in the ground, it's still doing its thing. And that's why it's very important. These are what we're worried about on the ball field. Your gamma rays or your X-rays, those aren't good either, but we're more worried about kids breathing in these little particles, these radioactive particles. So that is why we sent it off to Eberlein. Eberlein will tell us how many of these particles we have in our soil. It'll give us a better idea of what's going on there. This is the other reason why we really want not only BMAC, but other off-site testing done. This is an old picture of our landfill. So this down here is this is area 2. Can you guys kind of see the trees and stuff, the little patches in there? Area 1 is right up there at the top, on the other side. This right here is really important. This right here used to be the Ford property. This was all a farm. I'm going to have her go back in a second. Do you see what happened? So go back. Okay, see it was like that. They expanded it. This is what it was, and then they expanded it. All of this area, go back again. All of this area was radioactive. This all happened under EPA's watch. This is right by, if you guys know where Roland Machinery is, right there by the corner of the Rock Road. This is Roland Machinery, this is AAA Trailer. This was moved and messed with by the owners of AAA Trailer. This was graded, highly radioactive soil. This happened in about 2002. Happened without the landfill owners knowing, and it happened without EPA knowing. So you had somebody in there grading. They hired, this is a picture of the field. They actually went and hired a company from Arnold that did just normal landscaping. Hired them to come in with tractors, backhoes, and graders, grade the soil, and then they pushed it up. Is there a picture of the berms?
No.
And then they left it like that, and EPA came out and said, no, you can't touch this stuff, it's bad, what do we do with it? But they had already pushed it into mounds. And they wrote back and they said, those mounds, sitting the way they are, sitting out like that right here on the Rock Road, they're dangerous. The wind can blow those particles, it can get into the community. This debate went on for several years. Finally, AAA Trailer got tired and pushed rock over it. So they didn't mess with it once, it was messed with twice. Without EPA supervision, without air monitors knowing what was blowing around in the community. These are Ford property documents. This is basically the interim measures work plan, soil piles on the Ford property. This is basically talking about the fact that it needs to be cleaned up. Down here it says, it was noted by Hearst and Associates that the excavation process has increased the potential for windblown particles to exit the property. And mounded material is subject to erosion potential due to runoff from precipitation. Again, based on the potential for wind or precipitation, runoff-induced erosion and transport of these soils, the respondents through this work are proposing to conduct, subject to EPA approval, a time critical. So they noted that it was of utmost importance to get this done right away, removal action to retrieve and relocate those soil piles to prevent potential off-site transport. Okay, so here's our property. Here's the rock that they put down on the Ford property. It's still there. That's what all the trailers are parked on top of today. Okay? The important thing about that is so much time passed that, first of all, it's still there. It's still like this today. It hasn't been remediated. The soil mounds were over here and over here where they had pushed them up. They waited so long that they became covered with vegetation. They said, well, that's good enough, and left it. And supposedly it's still there today, although people that have been back there, including EPA, have not been able to find those stockpiles. So there's some question as to whether or not somebody's gone in there and moved them around as well up on the landfill, which is very scary, as we're highly radioactive. I want to move on to that really quickly, to the AGs. First of all, stop for a minute. That's the BMAC gamma. Does everybody in here, I know you don't have email, right? You don't have a computer? Yeah, is anybody that doesn't have computer access that wants this information, please come and see us afterwards and we'll print it out for you and make sure that you guys have a copy. These are our test results from BMAC, just the gamma, not the alpha and beta.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Really quickly, do you see this little carriage looking thing right here, the baby carriage? Was anybody at the press release? Did anybody get a chance to look at this? It's actually pretty neat when you think about it. We're very, very fortunate. We have a lot of engineers that are helping us out on this issue. And one of the things that we're looking at is the specs of this machine. It's kind of like, it looks like a baby carriage. It's kind of like a big Geiger counter, although it does have the ability to test for alpha and beta. My conversation yesterday with EPA, they stated that they were going to run over it with the gamma first, and if they found any spots, then that was where they were going to test. Now, I've heard just the opposite. When I was talking to the technician at the press conference, he mentioned that they were going to do random soil samples. So there's some confusion even within EPA on what this work plan to test BMAC looks like. So that's another reason that you need to stay either on the Facebook page or on the website. You need to pay attention, because I'm hoping the work plan comes out tomorrow. But we need to make sure that this machine is very sensitive. Remember, we talked about the background level and the remediation level. If you go up on West Lake, you're going to get 2 million counts per minute on the surface in some areas. You're not talking about levels that high on the ball field. So again, it needs to be a very sensitive piece of equipment. In fact, again, not to get too chemistry, it needs to be able to pick up 0.002 counts per minute above background. That's how sensitive it needs to be. So we have some questions for the technician, and we're hoping that when they come in town to do the testing, we'll get to meet with them and kind of talk to them a little bit more. The fire update. I'm going to have to walk around front because I cannot read this. This is, Ed Smith has some letters in the back here. We're very fortunate. We get to send questions and letters once a month to EPA through the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. We also have a CAG, a Community Advisory Board, that is tasked by EPA to represent the community. Bob Nollins here, he's the co-chair of the CAG. They have their meeting coming up next week. We'll announce that at the end. This is basically a letter about EMSI. If anybody was here last time, you guys signed on to a letter asking that they be removed as contractor. EMSI is Republic's contractor. They've been up at the landfill now since 1995. And since the past year, we've had a Washington University scientist who said that they completely failed to classify what's at West Lake. Recently, we had the EPA's own Office of Research and Development look at some of the memos and some of the plans that have come out from EMSI. One being a plan that many of you probably remember that states that it's okay to let the fire hit the radioactive waste because nothing will happen. And the Office of Research and Development said, no, we're not going to let that happen. That's, and they went through a whole list and basically called them out as being bad scientists. The second thing that happened is USGS came back out, and we will post this on our website with a report agreeing with Dr. Chris on many points. One being that, and this is really critical, that it's probably not just leach barium sulfate sitting up at this landfill. That 8,700 tons of what they call leach barium sulfate was more than likely mixed with other residues, along with the dirt, which was horribly contaminated and dumped at West Lake. So keep in mind that even in the past 2 weeks, we've just had a report come out from an independent federal agency that completely shines light on West Lake. It's been there now for 40 years, people, and we still don't know what's up there. That is one of the critical things that we absolutely have to find out. The fire, to our knowledge, I wish Matt were here, he could give you more information, but to our knowledge, the fire is still stalled in the neck area. They are waiting, I think that we just got last month, the CO data. They're waiting for the next round of CO data to come in to really tell, along with the temperatures, where that fire is. But it looks like it's still stalled in the neck for now. I know a lot of you hear us talk about the trench being built. Stay tuned, that should be, we're hoping for a work plan very soon, although we did find out from the regional director, Dr. Brooks, that as of right now, there is no clean line to put that in. And what that means is, If we have the fire stalled right here. This is the North Quarry. This is where all the radioactive waste is. This little outline is where they thought it was. They're finding pockets of this waste now in here, so they're testing for a place to put this barrier. And they're continuing to move further south in their testing in hopes that they'll find a clean line to put a fire break in, whatever that looks like. And as of right now, there's not a clean line. Really quickly, and I'm not going to read this, but this is the background, kind of like we talked about, of what West Lake is, where it came from, the Manhattan project, where the waste was made, how it ended up, and a little bit at the very bottom, the Attorney General requested testing outside of the landfill at the Hall Roads. That's where we are today. I believe today's the 15th, right? So this is the Attorney General's deadline today. If you remember the letter that he wrote to Dr. Brooks, he asked that there be some sort of response. Now, the EPA has agreed to test BMAC, but he's still asking that they test the haul routes as well. This is our Jefferson City trip. I'm really glad to see Spanish Village here and the mobile home park and the condos. We went down to Jefferson City, met with 2 members of the Attorney General's staff, 3 members of DNR, 1 hazard waste specialist, and a member of the Department of Health and Senior Services. We sat at a table, and I think one of the best things about that was we had Kathy Bell with us. You know, for those of you who live in this impact, and we're all impacted, but those of you that live really close to this landfill, unfortunately, I think a lot of that's due to the lawyers. We haven't heard very much from you, and you have your elected officials, so to have somebody there fighting on your behalf really made a difference that day. And that was the day where he sent, you know, on our way home, we got the phone call that he did send a letter to EPA asking them to test off-site. But I want to encourage you to reach out to your city council members. We had 3 here from Bridgeton tonight. We have, oh, sorry, and Linda Eaker's here too. Linda Eaker, your city councilwoman. We have Bill Ray over here from the county executive's office, from Charlie Dooley's office. It's really important that your voices be heard. You know, you guys, I understand you guys have petitions back there on the table. You know, we encourage you to, you know, even if you don't want to be in front of a camera, send in an email to one of these elected officials and let them know that you're not doing okay, that you're not happy about the smell. I think that sitting in that room with those people, and I think Kathy will agree, I think they had the impression that because there were lawyers involved, everyone was content and happy and pacified. And, you know, they need to understand that that's not the case. That's, you know, just because there are lawyers involved doesn't mean that your elected officials don't have to represent you. So.
I'm just confused about one thing you said. In Spanish, okay, you're saying these mounds show radioactive gamma rays, but then EPA says there isn't any in there. So that's where, so if they've been there for 10 years, that means everybody within a vicinity, how many miles, it's not just Bridgeton, would be breathing these particles?
The mounds that I'm referring to on the Ford property where you saw the trucks parked, that area?
Did you say that yet?
Yeah.
Why does EPA say nothing's radioactive in the air over there?
Well, but they haven't tested.
They haven't tested it.
Well, I mean, they've tested the mounds. They know those mounds are radioactive. But remember, those mounds sat there and they weren't covered with grass for a very long time. These two were arguing. This process, this Superfund process, one of the ways that it's broken is it takes so long because they have to negotiate with these companies and these responsible parties that meanwhile, yeah, the piles were just left to just sit there and blow in the wind and let the rain run on them. That's how it got there in the first place. It moved onto that. It migrated off-site onto that property by wind and water. And then when the owners pushed it back up, said, here you go, take it back, and put these mounds up, EPA tested the mounds in the ground. And they said, don't touch it again. Don't touch it again, it's bad. And then they were arguing about what to do with it, and so then AAA Trailer they went out and touched it again. I don't know why, you know, and then they covered it with, they graded it again, and then they covered it with gravel, and then parked their trailers on it. But the mounds, the original dirt that they pushed up, those were still sitting there. And then what happened was an inspector came out to examine those vegetated mounds and couldn't find them.
But what I'm saying, where's it, if that's been for 10, 12 years, it's gonna be like Agent Orange with the poor Vietnam vets, 40 years later when most of them are dead. Then they go, oh, well, yeah, we'll give you some money for the Agent Orange, which caused your problem, or maybe the family members. How do we know we haven't been breathing this in the last 12 years? Is anywhere on paper saying that it's been in the air since they disturbed these mounds, or did, so that like if somebody, people start showing up with the same kind of diseases within this area, we keep track?
You know, and that's part of the purpose of this is to come together, but no, the fact of the matter is nobody was measuring the air back then. They should have been. They should be measuring it right now. Should be out there right now checking to see, but they're not.
I asked EPA why they weren't, and then remember he didn't answer.
No, and then they say, well, I can't remember the wonderful phrase that, to the best of our knowledge, there is no scientific evidence, something, that it's not. What that means, and I've had we've been blessed to have lots of engineers help us with this who understand EPA speak. What that means is they simply there is no scientific evidence that it's in the air because they've never tested for it. You would have to test for it, have those come up completely negative to be able to say that. So they say, to the best of our knowledge. Same thing, right, just like BMAC. If you listen to what he said on the field, he didn't say the field is safe. What he said is, to our knowledge, there is no scientific data that indicates there's a concern. The reason our data doesn't count because they're not calling it scientific. So they can say that, that's EPA speak. They're not considering our data scientific, so to them, to the best of their knowledge, there's no scientific data that shows that BMAC is contaminated.
We'll let him build his home with BMAC then, okay? Let him buy some property and build it on BMAC.
Does anybody else have any questions along that line?
Thank you, Dawn.
No problem, Tom.
One thing you said before was that you guys are taking the necessary steps to make sure that the science is correct. So there is no second guessing of it.
Right, you know, we watched the technician gather the samples. He logged them. This has been at several labs now. Keep this in mind. We ran it on the Gamma Pal on our lab, caught a spike, and we thought, all right, we gotta hire somebody to do this the right way. So we hired somebody. They came out. They sent it to their lab. Those are the results you just saw. Came back with high lead-210, high gamma. Some of those numbers, if you do the math, are going to come out right at remediation level. If you do, is there a spreadsheet?
No, we don't have that.
We don't have a spreadsheet?
We have that.
Is that it? If you do the math on what they found on the spreadsheet, it comes out to be about 5.13 picocuries per gram. Remember we said 5 for cleanup level for food scrap. So we're about 5.13, but that's without alpha and beta added in. So to figure out if a sample needs to be remediated or not, you need the sum total of all radiation to go in those samples.
Businesses right there at Dawson and Rock Road is cooperating with you, their soil sample?
We've had businesses contact us. We are not. The moms are not doing soil samples. What we're doing is we're putting them in contact with the technician and the lab and giving them names of other labs and other technicians and letting them choose and letting them go through who they want to go through to get their soil tested. You know, for me, you know, that's, you know, we encourage anyone that wants their soil tested to do so, but that's not something that we're actually, but yeah, we have been approached. And we have given the lab's name and the technician's name for anybody that wants to call them, including EPA. But to this date, and I did check this morning, EPA has not called the lab. They have not asked about the protocol that was used, so.
I've got a few minutes I'd like to, everybody to be able to hear, so if you don't mind, could I stand up? So everybody can hear me because I have a very low voice. Okay, yes, please, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandy Ralston, and I grew up in Hazelwood, where the planes fly in, just before where she is talking about that was moved. Cancer does not run in my family, on either side. I have two uncles that were involved in this removal that both died of cancer. Okay? I am also a retired alderman from the city of St. Anne, which Coldwater Creek does run through. In the last 5 years, I'd have to say that my partner in alderman, and by the way, I want to commend the alderman here from the city of Bridgeton for having the guts to come up here and listen to the residents and what they have to say, because you are very important to us. And we truly expect you to stand up for us, not deny anything that may be going on that we need to know about. But my point is that I am recovering myself from brain surgery. I live up on Locust Lane, okay? We live on high ground. Now, of course, I know which way the wind blows, okay? We do not have cancer that runs in our family. My mother and I owned an income tax and accounting business called All Brand Tax. It was in between Hometown Buffet and Kohl's right here on the Rock Road. My mother ended up with cancer, does not run in her side. I ended up with a brain tumor, no cancer whatsoever on my father's side or my mother's side, with the exception of my uncles that were involved with this cleanup side. So I'd like to know, number one, is there anyone here from the EPA? No one here from the EPA. Okay, I'd like to explain one thing. I had a little dog, okay? And if we've got this flowing through our air, you can bet it's landing on your ground, okay? And I had a little dog who was my little angel, and he ended up with anal cancer, not on the inside, but on the outside of his little bottom. And I talked to a university professor in the state of Florida who had a cure for this cancer for this dog. However, the EPA would not give him a license to cure these animals that came up with this cancer. Why? Because it was not going through a pharmaceutical company, period. Okay? So we cannot trust the EPA, okay, or any of their testing. You're not going to be able to trust that. I think what we truly need is not only our Bridgeton, but our Maryland Heights, Hazelwood, all of our surrounding communities, including St. Anne, with Coldwater Creek running through it also, to band together for the sake of their residents. That is what their job is, not to hide it from us, but to make us aware of it and to let us know exactly what they're doing about it. Because every single one of us are at risk. We all walked in here, we smelled it. I can tell you right now that it's at 4:30 in the afternoon. A lot of people are driving home from work. They're not smelling it. They got their windows up, their air conditioning on, their heat, whatever. Very late at night, it's very obvious. I have my dad just passed away. I've been taking care of him while I was recovering from brain surgery, and I promised him I'd take care of his little dog, and I take her out about 10:30, sometimes 12, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning because she was highly overbred and abused. And I did the same thing with my own little dog. Whenever that odor was so strong, all I had to do was walk out on my back porch, and I literally had to cover my nose and my mouth. I picked up that dog and covered the nose and the mouth of that dog. I brought it back inside, and praise God, I did not get carpet in this home that I built, okay? I built it for me and my mother and my twin sister, and my mother passed away from cancer while I was building a house in Bridgeton for her and me. I'm sorry? I never lived in Overland. I went from Hazelwood to St. Anne to Bridgeton.
Flip that back real quick. The lagging side. Okay. So here's McDonald Boulevard, here's Slaps, here's Laddie.
Okay, can you come
It goes,
Yeah, the
west of there?
Yeah, this would be, St. Ian is down here.
Right.
St. Ian is down here on the bottom, St. Ian.
Okay, what about Hazelwood? Where have we got Hazelwood?
Hazelwood,
it's
this
north.
is Hazelwood.
Right, Hazel.
You're-
Towards the Bridgeton side?
No, wait, yeah, that's Hazelwood, this is Berkeley. That's, Ferguson, Florissant up there.
Ferguson.
Do we have
Florissant,
Bridgeton in there anyway?
Bridgeton is right
over there.
over here.
Okay,
Hazelwood's up higher, right?
Yeah.
Hazelwood would be up higher and Bridgeton
Yeah.
would be over here. So one of the things that the meteorologist is saying, are these particles will go,
right, depending on which way the wind's blowing, it could go just about anywhere.
we have the smallest particle size,
Um,
40 to 30 in St. Louis.
I can tell you that, like I said, this gentleman, university professor in Florida that had the absolute cancer treatment for my little dog could not get it approved by the FDA or EPA or anybody else in the federal government because it was not taken through pharmaceutical process, which takes years, as we all know. And the pharmaceutical company would have had to pay a lot to this man in order to protect our animals. The other thing I would like to say is, do we have any attorneys here that are siding with the plaintiffs? Do we have any attorneys here that are,
Yeah, we don't.
we have no attorneys here? I was just curious, do
Mom's
we?
not involved with any litigation, so we don't get into that.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to ask is, do we have any testing as far as soil testing? I'd like to ask the Bridgeton alderman, would you please, at your next Board of Aldermen meeting, put it on your docket to have your residential areas tested as far as Locust Lane and Avery Lane. As far as there. This is absolutely, undeniably, the smell is there. You cannot stand outside. It's always very late at night, mainly at night. I did smell it today. I smelled it horrifically when I came in here. But there's also one other thing that we can all do without anyone stopping us. And that is having our own doctors test our blood gases for any type of methane gas, radioactive waste, radiation poisoning, MBOs, microbiological organisms, radioactive waste, plutonium, heavy metal poisoning, and blood gas testing is not uncommon at all if they feel like you have toxins in your blood. So, and as I said, I am recovering from brain surgery. I had a brain tumor, and I've owned a home in Bridgeton, landed since 2002. I built a home in 2005. And my mother passed away from the cancer. We both worked right here down the street. And as I said, I praise God I'm alive. So I would truly request the City of Bridgeton aldermen to put this on their docket and have a public hearing regarding this very serious issue. And by the way,
No.
okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, I would like to say one thing. The mayor of St. Anne is now passed away from cancer, and also 2 of my alderman friends have had cancer, and one of the brothers have passed away. So I just want you to know that, and all live next door, right by Clearwater Creek. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the great things is our medical community is awake now. We are meeting with the health department. She's right, you need to communicate with your doctors. You need to be honest with them about what you live next to. But the fact is, we don't know. We don't have any results in from BMAC right now other than our gamma. So there is, you can look at the history of these sites, especially in Laddie Avenue and whatnot, to see that this has gotten off-site throughout St. Louis. But what we don't know is what is the outcome from that? How many people have been exposed? As far as off-site testing goes, thank goodness we have our Attorney General who has written a note to Carl Brooks for the haul routes. You know, my understanding is several businesses have come forward and done their own off-site testing. So we're just going to push forward, wait for our results to come back, and we'll let you know what those are.
I just have a quick question. Since we have 4 of the city council for Bridgeton sitting in the audience tonight, at the council meeting that you had before, Randy Hines stated that he did find out that you have an ordinance. It's called an odor nuisance ordinance in this city. So you can be fining for public services for the stench that's been going on for over a year and a half. And you have not used that bylaw. So I'm asking you as a mom, and I'm assuming the people in this audience would like an answer to this question.
Are there any other questions?
One question, please. Who owns these properties? Who owns them?
Who owns all of them?
Who owns these landfills?
Well, Republic owns it, but there are other people responsible. There's General Atomics, who has very deep pockets. DOE owns it. In some ways, we're actually very lucky. The people that own West Lake Landfill, like I said, do have deep pockets. They do have the money to fix the situation, so we are lucky in that respect. But as far as vicinity properties go, when I say vicinity properties, that's any property that's become contaminated by migration, whether it be windblown or water. The owner, so if you owned a business out here and it was found to be contaminated, you would still own that business. That wouldn't be taken away from you. What would happen is you would work with either the EPA or the Army Corps, and they would come in and remediate it. So, any other questions?
Is the EPA, is this the federal EPA that we're dealing with, or is it local, state, whatever?
It's federal, but we have specific regions of EPA. States are broken up into groups. We have Region 7.
If it's this disastrous that has been there for 40 years, untaken care of, why isn't somebody at a real high level looking at this?
One of the things, and that's a really, really great, did everybody hear what he said? If it's been there for 40 years, and it's so bad, why hasn't it been taken care of? If you remember, I referred to a USGS report that just came out 2 weeks ago. They are still just now finding out how bad Westlake is. So one of the worst things that's happened with Westlake, aside from the fact that it's been allowed to just sit there for 40 years and do whatever, is the fact that it's not been properly studied. It's been, you know what I'm saying, in order to find out what was dumped there, they interviewed drivers. So they interviewed the people that illegally dumped it and went off of their testimony.
Is there no way to get any public recognition at high levels to complain about this?
You know, you have a lot of, I know that a lot of the Bridgeton City Council have been vocal, a lot of the state reps have been vocal, but until we find out exactly what's there and how bad, you can't figure out how to deal with it. And the record of decision, they were going to do a 2008 record of decision to cap it. That was based on the barium sulfate. Does that make sense? Like, they called it barium sulfate, and now you have reports saying, no, it's not really bad. It might be a little bit of that mixed with some really bad stuff.
Do they need to go after the people that said it was barium sulfate and see if there's something else that they know? I mean, is there some sort of conspiracy being hidden from us to allow this to be perpetuated?
I can't tell you.
I'm gonna let her answer this.
Part of the problem when they actually dumped, or when they took materials from Laddie Avenue, these drivers were told to sort it by color. So a lot of these drivers sorted, okay, here's some yellow soil, here's some red soil, here's some white, and that's how they decided what they were going to put on the rental cars and what they were actually going to dump in Westlake. So I think that also presents one of the big problems, because they didn't know. And of course there's cross-contamination between all the colors. So what was in the colors?
Have you tried to make this a national news story in any way?
You know, the Wall Street Journal's covered it, Rolling Stone's covered it. We're trying to get it national just for the sake of getting the pressure. You know, one of the things, after 40 years, they have to come up with some kind of decision. They have to figure out what they're going to do with this. I know they're working on a barrier, like I said, to separate the fire from the waste. But we have so many battles with this. We have to make sure the fire doesn't hit the waste. But always in the back of my mind, we have to be thinking about what needs to happen to the waste regardless of the fire. You know, obviously, it's a non-remediated Superfund site. All Superfund sites have to be remediated at some point. So it's not acceptable, according to EPA, for it to sit the way it's sitting now. It's just we're waiting in limbo for a decision to be made on what the long-term solution is.
I was just curious if the approach to the problem would be to deal with it directly. If you could move radioactive material from one place to the other, as you did in the Laddie subdivision, right? Why can't it just be put on some kind of a railroad car and take it to federal property, dump it in some kind of concrete container so that it won't affect anybody? Why can't we do that?
The White House, that's where it begins.
You know, and it's interesting that you say that. It's very important that you guys know that behind the scene right now, and I think you guys, some of you who've watched the news, you've heard about the Coalition to Keep Us Safe. It's a coalition, it's a group paid for by Republic Services, because the cheapest solution to this is the 2008 Record of Decision, which is to cover it with dirt and rock and clay and leave it there. No liner, no nothing, till kingdom come. And what they're doing behind the scenes is they're starting a group that's pushing back on us, trying to stop any removal action. So what they're saying is, don't bring this through our community on the train cars. Don't, it's gonna spill, it's gonna do this, which it has never done, okay? They've been moving waste, radioactive waste out of St. Louis now for a decade plus. There's been no spills, no nothing. So, but it's important that you know that, because we do have a senator who's relying on votes from southern and middle Missouri, and when it comes time to make a decision for this waste, we are going to be met with a pushback from that. And it's important that you guys understand that. So, there are other things like Weldon Spring, there are other ways of containing this as well. Yes.
I came to understand a little early on, I talked to a lady, she said something about Superfund site, people that work around that available in the past were kind of like covered or umbrellas for like if they had certain kinds of cancer and they would pay like $250,000 with a medicine. What about the people that just work around for the last 20, 30, 40 years? These guys
The umbrella that you're referring to is a workers' compensation umbrella, and that's really for Mallinckrodt workers and workers who remediate the site like this. So, like under FUSREP sites, they have what's called covered sites. The workers are, if they come down with, there's like a list of the federal government recognizes 22 cancers. If they come down with one of those, or any of the illnesses associated with ionizing radiation exposure, then they are covered. Only the workers. At Weldon? So you guys, are you a covered facility at Weldon? And that's not... It's what? BTmed.org is where you can go and get information on that, on the coverage. So, and I've got it written down up here, I'll give it to you afterwards. But yeah, they recognize that workers who work around this stuff, it's dangerous. So yeah, for those of you that live in and around it, you have to wonder. Are there any other questions? If you've seen the EPA monitors that are around the site right now, those are set up to measure radon. Those are radon monitors. So some of the radiation, but not all of it. The DNR, one of the things that we need to do, I don't know if you realize this or not, we do have 24-hour air monitoring for smell and odors and VOCs associated with that. However, we do not have what's called comprehensive air monitoring. We've had it done one time. It's been almost a year, and when they did that, they found levels of dioxin and furans and all kinds of other stuff. We have a VOC monitor, an area array monitor, and what it does is it takes the total of VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, like benzene and stuff, and it lumps them together, hydrogen sulfate. What we need is the comprehensive, because what that does is it breaks it up, gives the levels, because each individual compound has its own level that you can be exposed to. So, and obviously on nights like tonight when it's so heavy, it's important to know, exactly what that level is, because we may be over an exposure level for one of those. Some of those are dangerous in parts per million, some are dangerous in parts per billion, it just depends.
So you know you're over it, what's going to be done about it? I'm not saying you have to answer that. So what do you go, I'm in a medical field, you can go and get all this lung gases done. Like she said, it shows this. Like right now, it's in the air right now, it's coming in, as we were saying. And it's got benzene in it, and me being in the nursing department, I already asked for doctors benzene, because that's why a lot of kids have results of burning eyes. That's from benzene. They don't know benzene causes blindness 10 years down the road. So that's just one little chemical. They're not sure about what it can do long term. So you can go and get that listing, but then it's like, we need a backup saying, okay, benzene's been blown in the air 20 years, your eyesight's get bad, you get blindness, okay, the radiation. So pretty much, we can know all this, but what do we do about it? If the EPA says we're all okay.
And honestly, that's what you guys are here for. That's why it's really important that you call your elected officials and holler about it. The truth is, and when you're exposed to all those chemicals, you have to remember that there's the synergistic effect. What that means is it's like you're mixing a Kool-Aid, a cocktail. Think of a prescription drug when you take pills. There's some on the package, they say, don't mix this with this, don't mix this with that, makes them more potent, makes them less potent. It's no different than what you're breathing in right now, which is why it's really important to get everything in those specific levels. They're only testing for about 1/4, if even that, of what they should be. So we're asking for comprehensive air data. We're going to the state for that, so hopefully.
EAP just put a 24-hour monitor in Spanish Village. Isn't that public information, and how often do they have to tell us what's out there, or how do you get the information if you want?
That's a very good question. We've been kind of working with them on that. That is their information. I guess it is public. We can FOIA that information, but only after it's been Q&A'd. So they get the information, they go over it, they interpret it, they write the report, and then they make it public. They are telling us it's going to take about 1.5 to 2 months to get that information back.
But the suit is, they're wanting everybody to sign by May 23rd. So all this is just dragging out, where some people who are so indecisive, most of us have already made our minds up, but the rest of them who haven't, we have a deadline.
Right, and for us, I would encourage you to speak with Chuck and Kathy. I know meetings have been occurring. For the moms, we're not part of any litigation, because if we were, then we would not that we would have an agenda, but we want to remain just moms, remain neutral, and be able to go to the elected officials and not be represented. But I understand there are meetings taking place where the community, that are under litigation are getting together and discussing that. So I think Chuck and Kathy are spearheading some of that.
Earlier you said something about a 10-mile distance from the landfill that could actually contaminate it based on water and wind and whatever. Is there any consideration by the city of Bridgeton and St. Louis County to buy them places out so they don't have to live here?
Not that we know of. We did bring it up at the Attorney General's office though, when
I mean,
we
it
all
seems like
went.
our government is failing us with this type of stuff. If we've got people that are actually going to die because of some landfill that they created 40 years ago. And I mean, you know, what does our government officials in this room have to say about this? And where are they going with any answers for people?
You know, and like I said, I would encourage you to speak with them afterwards. I think the most,
I've
I
worked
think,
with Bridgeton for quite
and
a
the
while on
county
different
council is
problems.
represented.
They're not the people to work with.
Don, our greatest power is in our numbers, not 1 or 2 phone calls. The power of the people in this room is great enough to persuade every politician, including the state senator. So we have to make sure, maybe by your leadership, that we stand in front of their doorway when they go in their office so that they know our kids are being killed.
And that's why it's really, listen, you guys, you know, we have a Facebook page and a website, and you guys have signed letters in the back. You have called. We got 2 senators and 2 congresspeople from different parties to come together and sign a letter. Do you know how amazing that is? We got to get them to do it again. You guys have got Spanish, and especially, you know, the hardest thing has been us trying to be a voice. I live in Maryland Heights. There are people in this room that live way closer than I do, and I can scream and holler all I want, but they need to hear from you. They need to hear from you that are living here. That I get to go home, and it's going to stink at my house, guaranteed, but it is not going to smell the way it's going to smell at your house. If you live in Spanish Village, if you live in the mobile home park, and you live in the condo. You have got to call up your mayor of Bridgeton. You know what? If they're not working for you, then get them out.
The mayor of Bridgeton will not return calls. I mean, simple things like snow removal, they won't even work with you on that. So why would we expect them to do something like this?
We've got through, how many we got?
What we need to do is we need for you to call your work people. What's nice about Bridgeton is that they record every council meeting. You can sit in your living room and watch it. You can see what they say. We watch them say, we don't get calls. They won't admit there's a problem. Now, there are people here tonight that are sitting here, 2 for the first time. Thank you for coming. Mr. Grimmer's been here, and Linda Eaker's been here from the beginning. Same with Fur and Randy. They understand. You need to reach out to them and be angry and say, this is not acceptable in our area. You work for me. That's what you need to say.
So we have 4 aldermen here from Bridgeton, 4?
Yes, out of 8.
Out of 8? Okay.
We're going to take one more question, and we're going to wrap it up because it really smells. And every single person in this room needs to fill out that odor form when they get home or call tomorrow morning. They need to hear from every single person in this room.
Where's the odor form?
It's on the DNR website. It's on our Facebook. We will get that to you. You also have the phone number so you can call.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike. Chuck, did you want to say something real quick?
I just want to say, we've got the petition for buyout back there. I mean, read the settlement. I'm not going to tell you whether you should take that settlement or not. You can still sign that you would request a buyout to your mobile home park, abandoned village, and the condos over here. You can still sign that and still take the settlement if you want. I'd say read that settlement real close, especially page 3, and then sign it off on all the medical on the back. I mean, this is supposed to be odor nuisance thing. There's a lot more to that than what it was. So read page 3 on that settlement. Very important. If they can divide and conquer. That's my main concern. We need to stick together and say, hey, no, why do you need all this medical? This was a nuisance and odor, and you shouldn't be giving up your medical information for this. That's what you're selling. You're giving it away. You're selling a lot of that information right there. Read that very carefully before you do anything with that settlement. And like I say, if you want to sign for the buyout, it's back there. Even if you're not resident, you support us. Say, hey, you're this close to it. We support you being buyout. Please sign that as well. Now I have a question.
Okay, yeah, if you want to ask any more questions of Chuck and Kathy, they're going to be available for a few minutes afterwards. Also, please make sure that you sign the sign-on letters as well as those petitions. The sign-on letters, one of them is for the 4 federally elected officials to get this out of the hands of the EPA and turned into the hands of FISRAP, St. Louis Army Corps of Engineers. We need your support on that, and we need to get this done. The CAG meeting, the next CAG meeting is coming up.
We're not, that's what I wanted to mention was with the next CAG or community advisory group, and people from the EPA always come to that meeting. They're mandated to, since it's a CAG is funded through, or sponsored through EPA, they are mandated and they'll write at least that meeting. Like over the phone, also we sent them questions that were brought up at the last meeting, and they were to respond to those. But that meeting is supposed to be either the 28th, 29th. What we're waiting on is for the EPA to tell us what time schedule they can be here, and the Department of Energy for SRAP can be here. And so as soon as they let us know whether they'll be here the 28th or 29th, we'll get that information out, and, or you can see that on the, what is our website?
Westlakecag.org. We will also post the CAG meeting time and date on the West Lake Landfill Facebook page. Those meetings are held here, and like Bob said, that is a way for you to be a voice when the EPA comes into town. You can ask your questions, and they will stand up here, and they'll answer them the way they do. Our next community group meeting will be June 19th at 6:30 here. We are also looking into participating in the Bridgeton 4th of July parade. We had a float last year, and Megan, I think, are you gonna, okay, so we are gonna try to do that. Anybody that would like to be involved in that, help with that, we would appreciate your help. Thank you to Megan, Debbie Disser, Donna, and everyone else that's volunteered to help put these meetings together. We really appreciate that. We'll be around down here if anybody wants to talk to any of us moms. We'll try to answer any questions you have, and if we can't answer them, we'll find out the answer for you. Thanks for coming. Wait. Time out. We have Kirby Pemberton. We have Kirby Pemberton that would like to come up real quick, and she has something that she would like to share. So if you guys would like to stick around and hear what she has to say, that would be great.
Chuck and Kathy Bell were actually my daughter's coach, and they gave me the first place trophy. And so I've got a book that I'd like to give to them. And it's my daughter's book, and it's called My Brain Tumor, and it talks about how much she loves softball. And thank you for being her coach, and I love you for it.
For those of you that don't know, Kirby Pemberton lost her 12-year-old daughter to a brain tumor several years ago. And Kathy and Chuck Bell, who are the Spanish Village residents, have been longtime residents here, have coached a lot of young kids on the BMAC fields. And that was Kirby's tribute to them for what they've had done for her daughter.